People didn't know how to build a very reliable 308 at the time. So the concept of building something in a Magnum AR platform was just, mind-boggling. Telling people this is as accurate as any bolt gun that you're going to shoot, and just seeing guys just, what? No way. And, I have a saying, run your gun, not your mouth. I turn around and not 75 yards from where we're laying down looking over this water hole are 3 mule deer bucks standing there looking at us. I want to share an experience with you that is authentic, and it may tarnish my image on social media, but the perception that people build up of you is only based on what they want to see. This is Clint Walker, and you're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Put down your latte and pull on your boots.
I've been blessed to harvest 22 of the 29 North American animals with my bow.
My personal 24-hour record for death threats is 88.
They will start putting 2 and 2 together and realize this is how you call bulls in.
So when I go hunting now, that's the ethos I take with me. Whatever this hunt is going to throw at you, you pull your big girl pants up and you get on with it.
Giant bucks are freaking awesome. They're beautiful. But you know what? I would not trade this first buck for anything in the world.
So I'm a geek. Magicians and dragons and magic swords. I shit you not, man. I'm the biggest dork in the gun business.
I'm Freddie Hartice, Hollywood Hunter.
This is Aaron Snyder.
Hey, this is Trevin Stoltzfus with Outback Outdoors.
This is Rihanna Carey.
Hi, this is John Stallone of Interviews with the Hunting Masters.
You're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Hey, y'all, welcome to another episode of The Wild Initiative, brought to you as part of the Waypoint Podcast Network. All right, y'all, so hopping right into today's episode, I have Clint Walker. Y'all, Clint was recommended to me by Vaughn Neville, the Man Spot. I always ask my guests, who do you think is awesome that you think I should have on the podcast? And immediately, without hesitation, Vaughn mentioned you, Clint. So I really appreciate you hopping on, joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So always like to kick things off, just maybe a little introduction of yourself, but more importantly, how did you kind of get introduced to the world of the outdoors, or, in your case, especially the world of firearms?
Okay. Well, I think just based on the conversation we had prior to hitting the record button here today, that you and I might have a similar background. I didn't grow up in a household that was hunting and fishing per se. My grandfather took interest in me. My parents were separated. Here comes the violin. Insert that music here. My grandfather took interest in just getting me outdoors. So he would come pick me up. We lived in Southern California at the time, and he's an old Missouri boy. So, he liked to shoot and kill and skin just about everything from ducks at the pond in Los Angeles to squirrels on the back fence. And we would take off and go up to the Castaic Lakes there in California and sit there with his game call and try to call in coyotes. And boy, we just hunt anything that we could see. So it wasn't like hunting trips like you imagine when you're going out for deer or something, but it was an exposure to doing some cool things, the hunting and fishing. And I knew that, it was really something that I really enjoyed doing. It was such an adventure. You never knew what you were going to get into. So at any rate,
I'm going to interrupt you really quick for a second.
Yeah.
It's funny you say Castaic. My very first, I don't really count it as my very first hunt, but I guess technically it was my first time solo out in the woods with carrying a bow. Let's say that.
Oh, really?
Was up by Castaic. It was just up north of Castaic. Can't remember the exact area. I wouldn't mind sharing it because I saw absolutely nothing, but
right.
I was also woefully underprepared, and I was there for like a day and a half. I was like, I'm going to be up here, 4 days. I'll be good.
Sure.
I was there like a day and a half, and my gear was garbage. I had no idea what I was doing. I was so underprepared. It was laughable. But
wow. Well, that sounds much like my experiences there. We drive up there, and my grandpa's beat up VW bus, and the family called it the war wagon, and whatever he had under the seat in that truck, was what we were going to eat. So he had like cans of beans and soups that were expired. We'd eat those and get sick, and just kind of hover them over the campfire. I'm not kidding. I mean, we didn't have cool gear, nothing. And a lot of times, I didn't have a jacket or anything. We'd sit out there just freezing to death. And I was literally just sharing that story with my kids because we went up in the mountains here in Montana just last week during opening weekend for deer and elk here in Montana. And, as you know, you live in Havre, the weather here is quite extreme. We were up near the Canadian border, and that weather comes in on you, and it can be a life or death situation depending on how you're prepared. So we're up there. It was cold. My kids have all this nice high-end hunting gear because I like to buy nice gear. And I said, well, you guys don't know how good you got it. So anyway, that was my bit of hunting when I was a kid. Was very limited. I was always very much into firearms. I don't know why. I actually did a book report in sixth grade on Guns and Ammo magazine. If you can believe it or not, the annual Guns and Ammo that came out that had like all the firearms made, listed in it. I brought that to school, and that's what I did my book report on.
Could you imagine trying to do that in Southern California nowadays?
Dude, I mean, listen, if even words that begin with G get people really anxious there, so, kids can't, they just can't get a break in Southern California. But
I mean, you wear an American flag on a t-shirt, you're in trouble at this point. Like,
oh yeah, extremist for sure. So that's where I got my extremist roots, was there. In Southern California. I went into the military for a brief time. I'd wanted to go into law enforcement, and, out of high school, I just didn't know which way I was going to go. Tried to play football on a partial scholarship, got injured, joined the Army, thought that would be my ticket to college, and got injured there. So I got out and wound up working in the print publishing industry, which was great. It was automotive print publishing. I got to travel all over the country, meet a lot of cool people. And again, I head out to the East Coast. We do some of the truck events and racing events on the East Coast. And these guys would always want to go out and go, raccoon hunting or whatever it was, whatever venture. And I was like, man, I really dig this. So a few years into that, I traveled to Montana to do some fly fishing, and got talking to a buddy of mine. He's like, man, it'd be so cool to live here. And I was like, I could live here now. So my wife and I, who had literally been married less than a year, I came back, said, hey, how would you like to sell our house in our gated community here in Irvine and head to Montana? And so we both quit our jobs and left the state. We started a print publishing company of our own, and did some technology-based magazines at the time. Turned that into a marketing company, and the marketing company did a lot of stuff in the outdoors. So sold that company to Maury Povich, of all people, in 2013. In 2012, a guy that I knew up here, Major General Paul Vallely, who was a Fox News correspondent at the time, and a friend of mine, we decided to get into the firearms industry. I was actually, it's like, how do you get into the firearms industry? So, here in Kalispell, Montana, where I live, we published a number of magazines here in the state and visitor travel guides. So I knew a lot of people. I'd been asked to serve on the board for economic development here in the state. And one of the tasks I had was trying to find a industry that we could cultivate or attract, to Northwest Montana. As you know, we don't have a lot of industry here in Montana, and our number one export is our children. So not a lot of careers, here, and having two of our first kids at the time, it was important to me to try to create some sort of industry here where, if my children chose, they could, at least get a viable career here in Montana. So I started studying the firearm industry. At the time, a guy named KK Gents was just trying to get his carbon fiber barrel company up and off the ground. And we started attracting different companies here. KK, that company later became known as Proof Research, which is here in our backyard. And, through a series of efforts, we were able to attract a number of firearm-related companies here. And at some point, I decided, you know what, I think it'd probably be a good idea if we start our own firearm company. So we founded Nemo Arms in 2012. And that company was well known for, coming out with the first 300 Win Mag AR, so a Magnum platform AR. Believe it or not, I only owned one AR-15 prior to starting a company that manufactures AR rifles. And it's an interesting thing, a lot of people assume when you're in the firearm industry, especially if you make firearms or you design and develop, that you must have some background, in the military or something like that. What I found is that, the guys that we work with, and we work with a lot of people in the military, we sold to the military, which I consider a highlight of my career. A lot of the guys that are the actual shooters of those firearms, the users of them, don't know anything about, how to manufacture one. They come up with some great ideas. So it's kind of a miscue in our industry that you have to have a military background in order to, be someone or create something that's viable in this industry. We found is just having a open dialogue with the military helped with us in guiding us into which direction we wanted to take the company, from a product development standpoint. So we did that. We started it right here out of my garage, and it was a hot rod approach. So I mentioned the publishing industry, and the only reason I mention that is because it was working in automotive print publishing, which is where I started. You build hot rods and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And us building the first 300 Win Mag was very much like you build a hot rod. People think when you build a hot rod, you just, buy all these parts online, bolt or weld them together, put the key in ignition, turn it on, and it starts. Very, very, very rarely works that way. And guys that build hot rods know it. I mean, you can have the same exact fuel cell, the same exact ignition, same exact motor, same exact blower, same exact this, and this, and it's always something. So it's the tweaks and tunes. You're just used to it. And for me, I didn't know enough about the AR-15 platform to know what wasn't possible, but I knew the experience of trial and error and as part of a development process. And that's how we developed the Omen, the 300 Win Mag. So interestingly, in that process, this was at a time, this is 9 years ago or so. People didn't know how to build a very reliable 308 at the time. So the concept of building something in a Magnum AR platform was just, mind-boggling. And in fact, I had a number of people tell me that it would never work, that it couldn't be done, et cetera. And I was joking with some friends recently, if I had $1 for every time I heard that. And then I remembered that I do have $1 for every time I heard that because of our success in that platform. So it was very interesting, a very, very challenging starting up the company at the time. And it caught like wildfire. I mean, when we actually figured it out, we call it split the atom. It was incredible. Now, we were building something in a very high precision platform as well. So, for me, again, it wasn't like I grew up with experience as a long range shooter. Certainly didn't have any experience in that in the military itself. But because of our dialogue with the military at the time, Army specifically, I got the best instruction and the best advice on the platform from the top snipers in the world. And that's who I actually learned how to shoot from those guys. And it was really important to me to learn, how they're deploying this rifle, what their experiences are, how they're using it, what their techniques are, because it helped me develop the rifle. So I was by no means, I would consider myself a precision shooter. But through the development of the Omen, you shoot 10,000 rounds of 300 Win Mag, you better be good at something, either paying the bill or, hitting a target. So, or both. So that's how I got my experience in that. I really became, as you mentioned, that you're into precision shooting. It's very addicting if you have that type of personality. It's like, wow, this is interesting. There's so many variables here on equipment and atmospherics and, all of these things, physiology, your own personal physiology. And you want to zero in on each one of those things so that now, the Delta is actually you, the rifle itself, the ammo, everything is perfect. And now it comes down to you. So I did that. And gosh, the company really took off, grew from a garage to a multi-million-dollar company overnight. You don't grow that quickly without experiencing growing pains through us. You got two ways to scale that rapidly is, debt or equity. In other words, you either take a loan from the bank or you sell shares in the company. We sold shares, grew so quickly one night, woke up or one morning woke up and the shareholder says, we thanks a lot. We don't like the way you run the company and we'll see you later. You're a shareholder.
Geez.
So I was pretty devastated at the time, actually. I mean, I'd never, ever experienced anything like that in my career. I never sold shares in my company when I was starting it, never took a loan. My wife and I bootstrapped our publishing company. So it was a new experience. It hurt, no doubt. I took about a year off and just did a lot of fly fishing, a lot of soul searching. And I knew that we hadn't perfected that platform. I knew that the Omen was somewhat buggy. And it was buggy because when we started it, keep in mind in that era, the 2013, 14, 15, those are the Obama years. There was a run on guns at the time. Mm-hmm. We also were getting back heavily into the war. Cycle of war was a factor. Ammunition and components had dried up. So, in 300 Win Mag, keep in mind, you've got, rounds that are 150 grain all the way up to, at the time, 220 was about it. Now, of course, they've got the 230 and some others. But the charge for it, the fuel that it's running on that powder was very different as well. So depending on what brand you're buying and whatnot, had different burn rates. So the pressure issues were constant. There was no way to just say, this is a 22 LR, it shoots this. It was such a wide range that the rifle was somewhat unreliable. So in the year that I had off, I visited, probably 15 different manufacturers, really dove into this whole concept of this overpressure and powder burn and dwell time. What was it that was it? Wound up going to a company that was actually a supplier to us here at Nemo. It's a company called Sanju Industrial. an aerospace company that made parts for us at Nemo. Talked to Jason Sanju. He and I put our heads together. He says, "Hey, how would you like to start a firearm company up for us? And you can continue your same effort on a 300 Win Mag platform here." And of course, for me, it was, opportunity to, finish what I felt was my legacy at the time in this Magnum platform and truly perfect it. They had a design at the time for that platform, which was similar to the Omen, but very different at the same time. And so I worked with engineer Aaron McGinty on that project, just a brilliant guy, very good friend of mine to this day. And I truly feel when we developed the Falcor brand, which I launched for Sanjo Industrial, that we truly perfected that 300 Win Mag in that platform. So in a nutshell, that's, how I got into the industry itself. I wound up being in precision shooting as a result of shipping a rifle that I knew was as accurate as any bolt gun, and telling people this is as accurate as any bolt gun that you're going to shoot, and just seeing guys just, what, how can AR, no way. And, I have a saying, run your gun, not your mouth. And for me, it's the same. Again, I go back to the automotive world. You can talk about this car that you built all you want, and how much horsepower it is and how it hooks up and all this crap. But the bottom line is, if you're not willing to, pull up to a line and race next to that guy, then you're not shit. And for me, I didn't like talking about how accurate and reliable it was. I'd rather go out and demonstrate it. So I started shooting in precision rifle competitions simply to prove that it was everything that I said it was. And, that precision rifle community at first, you could tell, is like, what? And then after a while, I was like, holy shit, this thing's the real deal. And I really enjoyed learning from those guys and that whole experience of shooting in the competition dynamics and National Rifle League series. I really, truly enjoyed. That's probably one of the most fun things I've done in the industry. So sorry that's a run-on sentence and story for this, but that's it.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, it's been a while since I've really kind of done my precision shooting stuff, and I mostly came at it from a beginner's perspective with my instruction, teaching people that honestly, a lot of them have never touched a firearm. And by the end, it was a 2-day course I would teach, and by the end of it, they'd be shooting within 4 MOA spec. We'd take them out to 100 yards typically. It was a lot of fun doing that. Through that, I got into a little bit of competition here and there. I always shot kind of the vintage military rifle competitions, which was a lot of fun.
Very cool.
I will admit, it was really fun going in. A lot of guys with their AR platform rifles, made to spec as a military style rifle, so it matched all the specs. Yeah. And then I roll in with my 1939 M1 Garand, and
super rad, yeah.
Dude. Oh, so much fun. And I'd come in and they'd look at me, and I mean, I'd rarely win, but I always managed to walk away with plenty of respect from those dudes rolling in with that beast.
That's awesome. That's just awesome. Yeah. I got to tell you, for me, the competition side did more than just give me an opportunity to, prove the platform. It also was great for R&D. Especially in competition dynamics series or NRL, National Rifle League, you're kind of running around in a dirty environment. So things get dirty, things break when they get dirty, they fail. And you can't do enough R&D that mimics those environments without just being in them. So that was really helpful. And I learned a lot about our platform. And funny enough, I mean, I had guys that when you're running around on a course like that, typically a course of fire is, 5 miles, maybe 10 miles in a day. And you kind of, go from each station to timed shooting, locate, range, and engage your target. And I would run into guys that you could just tell that they were just completely defeated. And it's like, hey, what's going on? Oh, my rifle, shit the bed. Oh, well, let me take a look at it. I'm a competitor, and I would literally fix people's guns. I carried parts. I freaking had files, and I can remember fixing people's guns that turn around and beat me and won. And they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just enjoy doing this,
and what's the fun in winning if you only won because of a malfunction?
Right. And again, it goes back to the whole automotive world. If you're into racing and that sort of thing, I mean, of course you have rivalries, right? But the aspect of building something that races and has run hard and then it breaks and you fix it on the fly and you just use what's available to you. Again, you learn so much. It's tribal knowledge that you just can never experience is the best teacher for tribal knowledge. So great time. I had a great shooting partner at the time, Tyler Hughes, who was a Marine Scout sniper. He still runs around and competes to this day. And it was just neat. So definitely a highlight for me. Starting that company, and that company was people would say an overnight success. It very much happened very rapidly, and it was awesome. So at any rate, that's my intro into the industry. Today I own a company basically doing consulting, product development, and brand. I mean, we do everything but actually make the parts for several different brands, and I truly enjoy it. I really some days I just pinch myself and go, man, I can't believe what a wild ride this has been in this industry. I'm in a good place. I've got a great team, and we work with some fantastic brands, and I get to go do things that I enjoy. So no complaints over here.
So suffice to say, you have a little bit of history when it comes to firearms. You have a little bit of knowledge here and there that you've developed, just a tiny bit.
A little bit, yes. Yeah.
Yes. One thing I'd love to talk to you about is we cover a little bit of everything in this podcast, but it generally always comes back to the outdoors and hunting and fishing, whatever that happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those things. It's like I'm not super in depth in the firearms industry. Like I've kind of gotten the rifles I've gotten through one way or the other, whether it's just happened to be what was available or what, somebody suggested at one time. And I never really got into extremely in depth into different calibers, the benefits, the drawbacks,
Sure.
styles, things like that. And there's actually two things I'd love to talk to you about. One would be handguns in the backcountry, mm-hmm. as well as rifles for hunting.
Okay.
And, we can maybe hop on the handguns in a bit, but one thing I'd really love to talk to you about is maybe some of the more popular hunting calibers and really, the benefits and drawbacks, really kind of helping people choose. Maybe somebody new coming into hunting, maybe they want to start out and pick a good all-around rifle, something that can kind of get it done. They're trying not to spend a ton of money, and they're like, okay, I want to do some deer hunting, maybe some elk. Maybe it's somebody kind of here in Montana where we've got a little bit of everything, and they're just looking for a good all-around rifle.
Sure.
What are some of the rifles calibers they could start looking at? So
you ask a great and timely question. Again, what's funny is, so I have a big presence on social media, and with that, I believe comes a responsibility to keep it real. That's how I approach my personal social media. Now, I say keep it real. Yes, I put some outrageous things on there from time to time, and especially with some of the political gifts that we get these days. I can't help but throw some of those on there as well.
I mean, it's just too easy sometimes.
It is. Wow. If you like fruit, this is a very fruitful time for being the meme king. So I try not to get too political, although certain things really trigger me. But I do that because I know that there's a lot of guys and girls out there that are like me, that are like, I didn't grow up doing this stuff, and I might not even know my way around a firearm, but I live in this area, or I'd like to start learning how to fend for myself, how to provide for myself, whether it's hunting or fishing or something. But it's a very intimidating from a concept standpoint. Like, where do you begin? And to anyone out there that's looking to do that, especially if you are a parent, okay, I strongly advise you just to start. Okay, whether it's fishing or hunting, just dive in. If it's hunting, it's going to be a little more difficult, but you're going to have to get a license in your state, and with that's going to come an educational aspect, and that's a good thing. So if you're a parent that wants to hunt and maybe teach your kids how to hunt, then go to your local fish, wildlife, and parks and get with them. They're going to put you in a course. It's not really going to teach you how to shoot, but it is going to go through just the basics of, what is an ethical shot? Where can I hunt? What are the seasons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I say that because I know that our industry is shrinking. Okay. And when I say our industry, I'm talking specifically about the outdoor industry from a hunting and fishing standpoint. Since COVID, I believe one of the big benefits that I've seen from COVID, not that there are many, but there are a few, is that a lot of people have been retreating to the outdoors and going, hey, when I go to the grocery store, I'm seeing, there's hardly any meat left in the meat department and whatever. So when you're in Montana here, where I am, of course, we saw a large influx of out-of-state people moving here, but everybody is a survivalist right now. Everyone's got a rooftop camper and a freaking water jug on the back of the car and whatever. And, I think it's great. I would say take a basic firearm course, whether that's pistol or rifle, number one. Number two, get licensed. And if you're fishing, just go buy some tackle, get a license, and throw some in the water and see what works. Turns out that's how our ancestors did it. So I really like that aspect. Here's what happens in the firearm industry, and especially in the world of social media. Clint Walker goes on to Instagram, posts a photo of Clint with his ibex, or Clint with his nilgai, or axis deer, or whatever, and it's like, wow, this guy's like crazy big time hunter, whatever. Well, guess what? I'm not. I never was, and there's so much that I don't know, and I want to share an experience with you that is authentic. And it may tarnish my image on social media, but the perception that people build up of you is only based on in part what they want to see, number one. And number two, what you show them. And there's only so many things you can show. So here I am, Clint Walker. I have started a couple of very successful firearm companies. I've built a name for myself in the precision rifle world. Taught long range shooting, all these different things. Now I want to go out and I want to hunt. I want to do it on my own. My first hunting experience, like where I actually shot something that was somewhat big game, was at a industry party down in Texas. I'd gone down to Houston for the NRA annual meeting. I was invited by some people that were there to go to this ranch after the meeting was over, and we were going to hunt and do the stuff. Well, dude, at this point, I've shot thousands of rounds, 300 Win Mag. Everybody knows my name. And now I'm going to this ranch, and I'm like, I don't know the first thing about shooting one of these hogs or whatever. I know how to shoot. But once I've put a hole in it, I don't know what to do with this thing. Okay. So these guys set me up in a folding metal chair. Like when you walk into a church that's having like an event, they give you this metal chair. Here's your chair. And here's a grocery bag with some ice in it and a Dr. Pepper. That was my drink of choice at the time. Put me out in this chair in the middle of this field. They said, we'll be back in a few hours to pick you up. And I'm like, what's going on? And anyway, I see what I thought was like a dog walk out in the middle of this big cornfield. This cornfield had been cut down. And I'm like, man, why is someone's dog way out in the middle? And then it hits me. That's a coyote, right? So this is how green I am. Okay. So I put my rifle up on the back of the chair. I look at this coyote's way out there, and I start milling on it to see how big. Well, I see some deer way out there. So I start milling the deer to try and get an idea how far this coyote is, because I have more familiarity with looking at deer in my reticle than I did coyotes. So I decide that this coyote's 500 and something yards away. Boom, take a shot, come up short. Thing starts to run. He turns, and at that point, I had a better idea. I had some dope, so I freaking put a hole in him. Well, I couldn't get over so I sat there on this chair, and I'm like, oh, I just smoked a coyote at 600 yards. But I'm sitting there going through my mind, how come I missed that first shot? I thought my math was good, whatever. Well, in Texas, the deer bodies are so much smaller than they are here in Montana. I mean, like really small compared to our deer. So that's my excuse, by the way. My math was off, at least. So I wind up shooting that. I shoot 2 hogs and a coyote that night. Come back, and these guys pick me up, and they're like, "Okay, we're gonna go gut this thing." And I'm literally standing there while they're stringing this thing up, and I have no clue what to do. In my mind, I'm like, okay, if they tell me to do it, there's all these industry people there. I'm just going to stick a knife in it and get all the inside stuff out. That's probably a good starting place.
I mean, that's about as basic as it comes, right?
Right.
The stuff inside needs to be on the outside.
That's right. So I'm standing there, and these guys are stringing it up. I'm kind of watch other guys, getting their stuff going. And this guy's like, "Hey, you want to do this, or you want me to do it?" I'm like, I'm good. If you want to just go ahead and do that. Meanwhile, I'm just standing there, just like watching, what are these guys doing? So that was my first experience. Okay. So in the industry, lots of opportunities to go down on different hunts with guides where, in Texas, it's a lot different hunting than it is here in Montana, right? They feed these areas for corn. They set you up in a blind that's, fairly warm and comfortable. And if you're lucky, it has good Wi-Fi reception, so you can, watch YouTube shorts or whatever. And you wait for something to come, right? And then you shoot something, and then a guide says, "Okay, I'm going to gut it and do all this stuff for you." So I've done that several times, and my kids are at an age now where it's like, hey, they are interested in hunting. They want to do it too. This is years ago. So my kids at the time are 7 and 9 years old. So we decide for Thanksgiving, we're going to head over to Zortman, which, if you don't know where that's as far east and north as you can go. So it's on the High Line, right before you get to the border.
Okay.
And we head over there. My kids and we are up and down these coulees. Actually, the first night we get there, we find this area, and I find water. And so we're looking over this water hole. It's about, maybe 300 yards away. And I'm watching, I told the kids, I said, see, deer or whatever, they're going to come to this in the evening or in the morning. So this might be a good place for us to watch. So we're watching for probably 30, 40 minutes. And my daughter keeps going, Dad. And I'm like, honey, you got to keep quiet because, they're going to hear you and they're not going to come. She's like, Dad, they're behind us. And I turn around and not 75 yards from where we're laying down looking over this water hole are 3 mule deer bucks standing there looking at us like, what's that guy doing down there? Like we're over here. And they were actually pretty good size, but I didn't decide to shoot one because this was literally the first night that we had gotten there. And I'm like, well, if we saw those right now, we're certainly going to see, some majestic looking ones tomorrow. Turns out that was a huge mistake. As we walked up and down these coulees for a couple of days, my kids never complained. They were just fully into it. And on the last day, we actually finally shot something. What's funny, a story that I love to tell, and I tell this because I know that there are more people out there like me that do not have experience. And I just want to share this because it was, to me, it was a pivotal moment. That the night before we went out on the first day of the hunt, I'm laying in this little cabin thing and I'm watching videos on YouTube about how to field dress a deer. So I'm literally watching, like, where do I do it with the knife? Because I'd seen people do it different ways. And yet, now I'm going to have to do it. And I want to make sure that I look like I know what I'm doing in front of my kids. I watched videos on how to gut my deer. And the day that we were leaving, as we were starting to drive out of there, we saw a big buck in this field. We shot it. My kids and I dragged it over and we gutted it together. And it was an amazing experience. And if not for YouTube, I don't know what I would have done. Again, I'm sure that I would have figured out how to get the stuff that was inside of it out, but the tips that were shared on YouTube certainly helped. So what I'm saying to people out there who haven't done this before, number one, nothing makes you feel more alive like getting outside of your comfort zone, period. And it doesn't matter if you're hiking in an area that, has weather or steep terrain or other challenges, or getting out and hunting. Push yourself. Remind yourself how small you are in this world, and there's a humbling experience to just know that, hey man, I still have a lot to learn. So fast forward, last weekend was opening rifle season. My kids are up around the Canadian border in Eureka, and man, we hiked a lot. I think the total on the GPS was about 20 miles in 4 days. Kids never complained. We saw lots of does, no bucks that we wanted to shoot at. We're going after my sons first, but in my pack was my knife, and I know exactly what to do with it now. Now the challenge is just finding the one that he wants to get. So I guess to answer that initial, question or topic, the first thing you got to do is get out there and just do it. You got to start, and you got to start somewhere. And a great place to start is hiring a guide if you can. They're going to take you out and show you where animals are and what to look for on the ground and tracking and all those things. If you can't afford that, if it's a budgetary thing, then, a basic shooting course, and which are available for rifle and pistol, and of course your hunter safety education. When it comes to caliber, I get this question a lot. Now, of course, you don't develop a 300 Win Mag AR and get known for it without, always saying that even when shit hits the fan and we're, ammo shortage and whatever, you can still buy 300 Win Mag at Walmart or in certain gas stations here in Montana. It's pretty readily available. So I like to remind people that when you are choosing your caliber, choose something that you know that you can find. Don't go out looking for these crazy wildcat esoteric rounds that you can't even find. I'll give you an example of that right now. 6.5 PRC is probably one of the greatest hybrid Wildcat rounds commercially available that I can think of ever. It is just an outstanding cartridge for its ballistic characteristics. Impossible to find right now. Impossible to get that ammo. I built a 6.5 PRC rifle that I wanted to use for this hunting season. And I have one box of ammo. I sighted it in, and that's all I could get. And I'm in this industry. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm recommending a round for somebody to go out as their first, let's say ammo, those things are not a concern, whatever. And it's not. I like 6.5 Creedmoor a lot. And I like it because it's a very forgiving round. Its trajectory is much flatter than .308, and your percentage on target is going to increase exponentially. It's a very forgiving round. It's also, doesn't have a lot of recoil, and then there's a lot of very, very good hunting type rounds out there available for it. In terms of an inexpensive rifle, that's a good starting point, someplace that you can buy right off the shelf and go out and be successful with. I don't think anything really comes close to the Ruger American right now in that sub $1,000 range. I think they're like $500 to $600 or something. Amazing rifle for that money.
I love hearing that because my main hunting rifle is a Ruger American.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
I got a 30-06 Ruger American in the gun cabinet right now. So that's always nice to hear a little bit of confirmation.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, you picked a caliber that is still something that you can find right now. Okay. You can go to Murdoch's or I can't remember some of the home and ranch stores that are in your area, North 40, and find 30-06. I mean, that's a good old reliable, and again, that's your heavier round. For here in Montana, I like that round a lot because we are always dealing with wind here. No matter where you go, wind is a factor, and you can get that in a heavier round. And again, people, if you're looking into long range precision shooting, the key is you want to shoot the heaviest round that you can, and whatever caliber you're shooting, you want to shoot the heaviest and flattest. So you want to get the muzzle velocity up, and you want something that's heavy because it's going to buck the wind. And that's important here in Montana, which is why 300 Win Mag is also a staple. But for new shooters, I still prefer something in that 6.5 only because the recoil is just less and easier to deal with. The reason I went to a PRC, by the way, is because from a muzzle velocity standpoint, I can cut my PRC down to 16 or 17 inches and get the same muzzle velocity out of my 6.5 PRC as I can out of my 6.5 Creedmoor with a 21-inch barrel. So you can lose about 4 inches of barrel and still have that same muzzle velocity. And yeah.
So all my gun buddies are going to roll their eyes at me when they listen to this. They're going to be like, Sam, really? But so what is the difference? Like, what makes that difference between the 6.5 Creedmoor and the 6.5 PRC?
It's just it's the case. It's the powder. It's just got more room for powder. And, keep in mind that, here literally in the last few weeks, I've killed, several very large animals with a 6.5 Creedmoor just because I had that ammo available. Mm-hmm. In fact, when we're talking about, big game and rounds, so I like 6mm Creed a lot. I really like that. My daughter shot her first deer with that particular round. Very, very flat shooting, low recoil. There's videos of me online shooting that same rifle, hitting a target at a mile 3 times consecutively with a 109 grain bullet, which that's asking a lot out of a 109 grain bullet. So it's very flat. And I've had good friends of mine shoot elk at 500 plus yards with the 6mm. Accuracy trumps everything when it comes to hunting. So if you're a skilled shooter and you can make that happen, a 6mm would do well. I shot my ibex with a 6mm. I was down in Texas just a few weeks ago, and we had a 6.5. I had my 6mm and a 6.5 Creedmoor set up out there. We just happened to have more ammo on the Creedmoor, and a guy who shoots a lot of archery. There was a cooland. Do you know what a cooland is? Animal?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, I didn't know what the hell it was either until somebody told me, but I asked a lot because it makes me sound knowledgeable. So a kudu is a very prolific African game animal, right? Mm-hmm. Big body, these badass horns that come up, and they're just awesome. And then an eland is, a massive game animal. You're talking, 1,200 pound game animal. I think it's part of the antelope family, also African. And apparently those two will intermingle and you'll get what's called a cooland, like this huge body, like 1,000+ pound body animal with almost looks like a heart-shaped antler on top. It's incredible. So there was one on this ranch.
I'm looking them up right now just to look at these pictures, and this is
insane,
awesome.
Right? Okay. So the guy that owns the ranch says, listen, about 4 months ago, somebody shot this eland out here with a 7mm mag, and right in the shoulder. And that thing's been limping around here for 6 months. Okay. Just to give you an idea of the body, right? A 7mm mag is that's a legit, round, right? He says, if you guys see it out there, I'd like you to kill it. And we're like, shoot, that's rad. We'll see if we can find it. So all we had, the biggest cartridge that we had was the 6.5 Creedmoor. And we were shooting this round made by Sierra with the Game King tip on it. And so it comes in a green box. It's actually Sierra bullets. And, Sierra makes this factory ammo. Dude, I'm a huge fan of that ammo. I've never seen a round as good for hunting and long range shooting as that round. And I've been a big fan of the Hornady ELDX for quite some time. So
what's the brand again?
The brand is Sierra. So Sierra bullets, they make, of course, the Sierra Match and whatever. They're known for making projectiles. Now they have their own line of ammo, and it comes in a green and black box. I just saw some at Cabela's yesterday, in fact. And the tip on it is the Game King. So it's a green tip on this particular round. So I taught a long range precision course out there. We were shooting 1,000 yards with that same round. And no joke, had 14 people there that some of them have never shot a firearm in their life. And every single person had a first round impact at 1,000 when we were shooting. And, we were using that round. It's because it was all that I could get my hands on before we did this. So at any rate, guy rolls out. They said, hey, we found this coolant. And if you get near it because it had been injured, this thing's going to run off. So we're 450 yards away. This guy sets this rifle up and 6.5 Creedmoor, shoots this thing, and it takes 2 steps, drops dead. 1,100 pound animal. I will send you the video clip of it. I've got it around here somewhere. It blew my mind. I was like, holy crap, I wouldn't have even bet that. But anyway, the type of projectile is everything. The that's on the front of that bullet. And of course, the casing and the weight, all those have a lot to do with it. And then, of course, accuracy is by far one of the most important things.
So definitely, as you're deciding which rifle to pick, you kind of gave some for people to check out, but like you said, the biggest thing is availability. It's don't buy a rifle, especially nowadays, if you can't find ammo for it. And if you can't find it in a decent amount, because especially when you're starting out, you're going to need to do a little bit of shooting. And I know I've been out when I've been kind of running low and I'm not in a great place to buy ammo, whatever it is. And I start getting a little stingy on my sighting in, my practice rounds, and because I'm getting nervous,
Sure. Yeah, that's common, and you can't. I've seen, talk about getting nervous. I've seen guys, buck fever, holy moly, that become a factor. For me, being experienced shooting, especially in a high pressure environment when you're competing, I don't get nervous when I shoot. I just look at it, as a target, and I try to be very precise. My kids are very much wired the same way. My son and I leave in just a couple of days. We're heading down to Texas to go hunting and fishing down there, and for him, he's he'll be 13 here in a couple of days. Shot his first big hog here last year about this time, and he started getting very nervous because he's looking at this giant animal in his reticle instead of just focusing on where do I need to shoot it. And so when I'm working with somebody that's new at shooting or even hunting, I tell them, look, don't focus on the antlers, focus on that spot that you're going to pick. Make sure that, when you touch this trigger off, that you're making an ethical shot. And that just to kind of unwind all this, or maybe complete this loop, I talk about long range precision shooting, and I have shot animals at, 600 and 700 yards before. It's not without stepping back and going, okay, what's my wind doing right now? What are my environmentals? Can I make the shot and make it ethically, confidently? And I tell people a lot, I prefer to see people shooting, in that 100 to 200 yard window, because that's where most people are going to be confident or successful. The only reason that I've stretched it out further is because of, the type of animal that we were chasing, or had to do, with just a bit of a challenge to myself. But I enjoy long range precision shooting. Long range precision hunting, I say really step back and just make sure that you're going to make an ethical shot.
Well, and it's so unpredictable often, because you can take into account all of the factors possible, but you're shooting at an elk, or you're shooting at some animal. An elk takes one step, it's like feet difference, It's not and you really need to take into account, we're not sitting here telling everybody, this round is good out to this, so you should shoot it out that far. No.
Right.
You got to take into account your skill level, the environment. And actually, you can see this, the Aoudad up behind me. I took that down in New Mexico, and that was a long shot. It was across a canyon. There's just no way we were getting in on them. It just wasn't going to happen. So, it was a still day. It was a nice, quiet day. And so I was able to take that at, I want to say it's been a while, but I think it was 625.
Wow.
And that was a 300 Win Mag. I brought, I will say the one thing that was kind of a bummer about that one is I had to borrow a buddy's rifle, or one of the guys I was hunting with. I had to borrow one of their rifles. I had my Ruger American, and he's like, where we're hunting, you're not going to get it with that. He's just straight up, he's like, no, he's like, you can carry it if you want, but we're not getting in close enough to get it with that. And so that guy, he had a lot bigger head than I did.
Sure.
And so I would go down to get on the rifle, and I'm like an inch below the scope at that point. It's just stupid.
Right.
And so that was a big struggle getting that. And that is part of the reason why that audad is female instead of male. But there's
funny.
Yeah, they were in the spotting scope looking at one audad. I was in the spotting scope looking at a different one. We both thought we were looking at the same one. And so like, oh yeah, that's the big bull, fire away. Or the big ram. And I'm like, okay. And it took us a minute to figure out what happened. And I saw something drop and they didn't. And yeah, but I'm more than happy with it. It was a fun shot, but that's not a shot I would take necessarily here in Montana on an elk on a windy day at all.
Right. Right. Yep. And again, that terrain and the environmentals have a lot more to do with that. For sure. Of course, your confidence with the rifle. Also, I've had that same thing happen before, by the way, where I had some guys that I was with looking at one animal and I was looking at another, and I let the air out of the wrong one. And, I felt terrible when it happened. And, but it was just one of those things that happens.
So you mentioned, you did mention a couple of rounds. We talked about, I've got my 30-06. It's a heavier round. And for me, I picked up that 30-06 Ruger American because, as we said, it has the availability of ammo. I mean, 30-06 is definitely one of those rounds you could pick up anywhere. And I was shooting my M1 Garand, so I already had all that. I was reloading ammo for my Garand, so it was easy enough to do new loads for the American. It was super accessible. So you mentioned, out of curiosity, why is 6.5 Creedmoor so readily available, but the 6.5 PRC so hard to find? Do you know?
It has to do with the casing itself. It's a unique casing. It's larger than the Creedmoor specifically. And so keep in mind that whenever there's a new type of round that's out there, the brass has to be manufactured for it. And I'm sure that what has to do with that more than anything is, companies are like, look, why would we even get into making PRC right now when we can sell absolutely everything that we make currently? So they're not investing in that new casing. But those are guesses. They're based on my experience in the industry, but that would be my guess.
Now you mentioned again the 6.5 because it's more readily available. What is it about the 6.5 PRC though that makes it such a good round compared to the Creedmoor that you prefer? Is it just the extra powder? Or?
Yeah. So there's the 300 PRC and the 6.5 PRC. Those were developed as PRC precision rifle cartridges. They were developed for precision rifle shooters to shoot flat, and that higher velocity is where it's at. So if you're running that full burn 24 to 26 inch barrel and you're getting full burn out of it, it's extremely flat shooting, which gives you a lot higher probability on all targets. I started looking at it for a hunting rifle simply because I like to run a suppressor on everything that I shoot. And even if I don't, for a hunting rifle, I like something that's a little shorter. It's easier to swing. It's a lot more nimble. If I'm running it out of a blind or, in brush or whatever, it's just more nimble, so I can cut it down. So that rifle allows me to cut it down into that 16 to 18 inch category and still shoot just like I would with my full burn Creedmoor. So that's why specifically I've been looking at it. Now, that being said, I've seen a few guys that are running short. I'm saying like 16 to 18 inch Creedmoors out there. And there again, you got guys going, why? You can shoot you're not getting full burn out of it or whatever. Well, it's still flatter shooting than that 308 that they're used to. And again, their probability is going to increase substantially.
Now, is the 300 Win Mag versus the 300 PRC, is that kind of the same deal where the PRC is a larger casing, or?
Yeah, it's larger casing for sure. It's a big ass cartridge. I've got some of those here. I just haven't built any of the rifles for them. But one of the companies that is one of our clients is a company called Helix 6 Precision, and they manufacture carbon fiber barrel, and they're out of Vancouver, Washington. And so when we picked them up, I built several different firearms, and a PRC is one that I chose. So it's funny, I found the ammo for one before I built the rifle, which was the 300 PRC. I built the rifle before I got the ammo on the other one. Now I've got ammo for one and no gun, and and a rifle and no ammo for the other. So those are good ones. If guys are shooting, if they're going to hunt with an AR, which is a great hunting rifle, by the way, despite the fact that we have some elected officials that don't believe anybody hunts with them. I used to hunt exclusively with an AR, and a great round for hunting in the AR platform is the 6.5 Grendel. That's a true 1,000-yard caliber in a small frame AR. And now 6 ARC has become extremely popular as well. So both great rounds. I just killed a nil guy down in Texas a couple weeks ago with a 6.5 Grendel one shot. A nil guy's a huge animal as well. Those get into 800-900 pounds. So
I'm not familiar with the 6.5 Grendel, and I'm like kind of Googling it as we talk.
Yeah. Think of it as a baby Creedmoor. Looks like a little tiny Creedmoor. Yeah. They're freaking awesome. I've got AR platform rifles that I built for my son and I for hog hunting, and they're in 6.5 Grendel.
I'm looking at it compared to like a 308 right now, and it seems like I'm just trying to get a picture of the size of it now, and that I'm kind of getting it. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by my own Google searches.
No problem.
But that's
a great round. Yeah. And again, what's nice about it is, 308's readily available. When you go into an AR 308 platform, you're going to add about 2 pounds to that overall rifle at the same time. So that's why I like the Grendel or the 6 ARC, because I still have a smaller frame, lighter weight, and all that good old muzzle velocity and flat trajectory.
Well, and I think that's super important, especially for people that are out here hunting, like we like to, out in the woods. You're probably doing a lot more hiking. You're carrying a lot more gear, where that may not be as much of a consideration. If, say, you are planning on sitting in a tree stand or a blind or, whatever that happens to be, you may, that's something you'll also probably want to factor into your decision, is the overall weight of what you're having to carry.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely a factor. And, again, when it comes to on the AR platform, when it also comes down to, if you're building or maintaining, then it's the, availability of parts and things that are readily available are common between platforms. Yeah.
Awesome, man. So if folks wanted to follow along with all your shenanigans online, find if they're looking for a good source of memes, where can they find you?
So on Instagram, you can find me at _Clint_Walker. And that's currently the only social media platform that I really use begrudgingly, because they don't seem to appreciate me as much as I appreciate the platform anymore. It seems like every time we turn around, something's getting banned or deleted just because, they don't like guns or freedom or whatever it is.
Isn't that always the case lately. I've been seeing a lot of people in the industry, whether it's hunting or firearms, and they've been just getting notices about features now that are being removed from, or they're being denied access to, or this or that or the other. It's a bit frustrating to say the least. But yeah, and also just I work in marketing as well, and have a lot of firearms adjacent clients, and so within that, trying to advertise on Facebook and Google and all of that is just a nightmare.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's the world we live in. I think, with every challenge like that, social media wise, comes new opportunities. It makes you step back and go, what's the solution here? So we get better somehow at what we do. What I don't want is for people to be discouraged by getting into firearm ownership. So I think every American should want to and have the right and ability to defend themselves, and also provide for themselves. And it used to be that guys like you and I were considered conspiracy theorists because we like to hunt and do those sort of things. But anymore, as food shortages and such started to happen, or at least prices started to go up, and people started to realize there's no toilet paper and no their basic necessities. People started to go, wait a minute, maybe I should start to get things ready, for myself. And I think one result of COVID is that it created a world of crazy preppers, which we used to be these crazy guys back in the day. Now, I will say that I never once considered buying a pallet of toilet paper until all this stuff went down. But now, along with rice and beans and that sort of thing, I think a pallet of toilet paper is warranted. That's said jokingly. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I mean, that's, social media is fun. I think, hopefully people can go in there without getting too polarized on any particular topic. It's hard not to be. But I would encourage people to wade through those types of things, focus on their family, their household, their individual needs, and develop skills that they can use to provide for their family. So that makes me crazy, or whatever, I guess, call me crazy.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad we found a time to chat, and thank you so much for joining. Likewise. Thanks for having me on the show, man. I really appreciate it. All right, y'all, that'll do it for this episode of The Wild Initiative. Make sure to check out the show notes page at thewildinitiative.com. Get links to everything we talked about in today's episode. Big thank you to Clint for taking the time out of his day to hop on. Really enjoyed that conversation and learning a bit more about various rifle calibers. Y'all make sure to go give him a follow on Instagram. Go check out the memes. Check out the gun content, the hunting content. It's all fantastic. But y'all had a great time. That'll do it for this week. Looking forward to next time. But until then, I hope this episode inspires you to get involved, get outdoors, and plan your initiative for the wild.
Thank you for listening to The Wild Initiative. Please take a moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher, and head on over to thewildinitiative.com to get show notes, check out the blog, gear discounts, other podcasts from the Wild Initiative family, and more.